Hello, this is Dread, and today's video topic is going to be the day 2 update on the Spectre Devoted Scholar Transform Mage build that I've been playing over the past few days. And let me tell you, Slormancer has been an absolute ride. It's been so good that I just genuinely forgot that I had to make YouTube videos because, I was supposed to be making a few videos over the past few days, but I've just been playing Slormancer, man, and I've been loving it. To be fair, I kind of needed a break after 7 months of being in the mines for Last Epoch, but it is now time to talk about Slormancer. And let me tell you, it is so good. Oh my goodness, the crack cocaine game got even more addicting in my opinion. So day 1, we leveled a character and got it to the end game, which is doing the first Adam Nostrous trials. Unfortunately, I woke up really early that day, so I was only able to get to the end game after, leveling for a few hours. We did get to the end game though, thankfully. We're at level 40-ish. Then I took a nap. Then I woke back up. I did some more grinding, and we were playing Arcane Clone, Arcanic Missile, mainly because I wanted to play with the first Reaper that I dropped that was interesting, and I dropped the Spectre Reaper. And the problem with the Spectre Reaper is it's not good until you primordial it for reasons that I'll talk about in a moment. But essentially, I was forced to play some kind of hodgepodge build for about a day, mainly because I was working on primordialing my Spectre Reaper and leveling up and getting gear. One thing that I don't like about Slormancer, this is just one small criticism in a sea of positivity, in my opinion, right? And a complete sea of positivity. The biggest problem that I have sometimes with Slormancer is when I do a fresh start, you want to kind of invest in your gear, but you don't want to over invest in your gear and level it up too much, because gear in Slormancer gets better as you level. The levels on the gear matter a lot in terms of the base stats that you get and stuff like that. So if you over invest in, let's say, a set of level 50 gear, you kind of end up wasting a lot of currency. But of course, if you don't invest enough into your gear, then you're going to clear slower and stuff like that. So it's kind of a catch-22 where I invest in my gear, I get more damage, but then I have less resources later. But thankfully, I was able to make it over the hump, and we primordialed my Reaper. Now, what does this Reaper do? Well, the concept of this Reaper, the Reaper Primordial Staff of the Spectral Horrifying Shapeshifter of Dread. Oh my goodness, I'm in the game again. Yippee! So the concept around this staff is we get access to the ancestral skill, Spectral Shape. We turn into a spectral shape, becoming untouchable for the next 7 seconds or until you use a skill. So untouchable literally means that we can go over dots on the ground. We can't be hit by enemies. I can go and walk right up next to an enemy and let them wail at me, and I don't get touched. Projectiles don't touch me. Nothing touches me. I'm pretty sure from what I have seen so far, literally nothing can hit me. There's even some parts in Adam Nostrous's boss fight where I wasn't getting hit at all by the AoEs, mainly because I was untouchable. So that's pretty cool. Now, while we're in spectral shape, we can move through enemies and deal a large amount of skill damage in an area, which is cool. So we just scale that and try to do damage with that. The biggest problem is the normal version of this, its cooldown is 7 seconds. But thankfully, the Primordial Benediction, the upside of the staff, allows us to move it down to a 1 second cooldown, which makes it viable. But the Primordial Malediction, the downside, makes it so that our mana cost to trigger this is our entire mana bar every single time. So we have to consume our entire mana bar every single time we want to go into Spectral Shape. Now, there are ways around this and ways to mitigate this downside, but the easiest way to do this is to not scale our mana whatsoever and then scale a bunch of flat mana regen. So the idea here is we're at 6,000 mana and I just grab like 1,000 mana regen on my gear, which is relatively easy at this level that I'm at, and then, you know, make sure that I regen my entire mana bar by the time I'm out of Spectral Shape, because remember, Spectral Shape lasts a long time. So that allows us to essentially have perma uptime on Spectral Shape. There's a 1 second gap where I could be damaged though. So there are times where I can die. Slormancer is the kind of game where it could definitely take advantage of a 1 second time frame to kill you, as Slormancer is a very scary game sometimes, but still, overall, great. Now, there's some other things that this Reaper does. Whenever Spectral Shape deals damage to an enemy, you apply a Horrified stack to the enemy hit up to 10 stacks. So, and it does 15% more damage per Horrified stack on enemies hit. So what this does is it makes it so that we're dealing about like 150% more damage to enemies on bosses mainly, which is great, right? And then now, whenever a horrified enemy leaves the range of Spectral Shape, whether that being them moving out of it or we move our AoE physically, right? We deal skill damage to him equal to the damage dealt to him by Spectral Shape. Now, this is very interesting. This is absurdly strong. Why is this strong? Well, the concept here is Spectral Shape can crit. So I'm hitting the enemy, I'm critting them, doing more damage with, of course, the Horrified stacks, right? And over the 7 seconds, I keep hitting him, keep hitting him, keep hitting him with the crits, right? Then I walk off of him, right, with Spectral Shape, and bam, I do all the damage that I just did over those last 7 seconds, right? And remember, it tallies up all the crit damage. But this new hit that we do is considered a new hit, which means this hit can also crit. So we can end up doing even more damage. So we take all of the damage that we did with all the crits that we did, and then we multiply it again by our crit multi. So effectively, our crit multi is being multiplied twice as long as we have enough crit chance, which is bloody absurd. A good example here is I'm ticking for like but earlier anyways, right? Before I did some upgrades, I was ticking for 40k crits on mobs before early on. But now, like whenever I walk over a mob and then do the combo, I can get like a full 3 million crit very easily with the, you know, with the staff, which is insane. But yeah, that's been my build so far. We've been building all around that. The biggest way of scaling this thing that we found was we can just go absurd life stacking and consume our life utilizing some life lock stuff, or we lock some of our life away, and that can give us a large amount of skill damage. And now the Primordial Benediction is up where we can scale off the elemental damage, and there's a lot of life stuff, so that's a lot of flat for our character. And then we just get like percentages from all of our gear and stuff like that. So that's cool. That's been amazing. But overall, the game has been amazing. I did the Adam Nostrous fight after like a lot of effort put in. The biggest problem with this Reaper is it's good, but its single target isn't the best in comparison to other builds. Like other builds with this same amount of investment could do significantly more damage, and that's just something you have to deal with. But we're immune for half the time. So like, sure, it took us longer to do our Adam Nostrous fight than other builds, but we did it completely for free because we could just sit there doing damage to him and relaxing and not taking damage. What a wonderful fucking Reaper, man. But yeah, now I'm in the Nether. Now we're doing some Nether realm farming, and we're eventually going to, you know, upgrade our character even more, but we're just going to go in game and talk about it a little bit more in detail. Now, if you haven't already, I'd heavily suggest leaving a like on the video and subscribing to the channel, as that is the best way of currently supporting me, and it's the best way to show me that you want more Slormancer content like this. Specifically, please, if you want more content like this, like Slormancer content, make sure to like the video, okay? Now, let's go in game and talk about this build more in detail. So, sorry my screen is the way it is currently. It's like a little fucked up in general. Like my screen is fucked up, but that's just because full screen for some reason isn't working as well. So I'm, recording in this really scuffed ass version right now. So ignore the fact that the screen is a little fucky, but let's continue on. So let's go over our build. So we're building around this Reaper. Like I explained in the intro, we just turn into a spectral shape in this area. We do damage, and then before the spectral shape ends, we move out of the area, which then does a bajillion damage to enemies when we move out of the area due to all of the scaling that we have. Cool. That works. It's great. We're already doing Wrath 5 forges. We're level 50 in the Storm Temple. We're doing like Wrath 6 like battlefields, and now we're doing the Netherworld. We also got done with part 1 and part 2 of Adam Gnostic's Trials, but the thing I will say is this build is not viable until you primordial your primordial staff of the Spectral Horrifying Shapeshifter of Dread. The reason why being is the cooldown. If you do not have this, and if you do not have this at a 1 second cooldown, this build does not feel good to play whatsoever, right? In my humble opinion, you could, in theory, scale some cooldown recovery on your gear early on, so you could play this build early on. But I'll be honest, you could just like play Arcane Commander, load up some clones, load up like Arcane Missile, and you're like good to go, in my opinion. Like you have like plenty of damage to go through the entire game. At least that's what I personally did. But you could use any mage build to level up until you get, the spectral staff, which is great. But yeah, that's pretty much it for the weapon, right? So let's talk about the rest of the gearing and stuff. So I'm not sure how I should go about this, but we should probably just go over our ancestral legacy tree, right? So the first thing that you're going to see is we're building a lot of elemental damage here. Now, the reason why we're building a lot of elemental damage is this scales off of skill damage and elemental. So part of our synergy here is we're running immense vitality to lock some of our life to get benefits off of this node here, where we have raw damage based on our missing life. This is flat damage for our skill, and that's where the raw line at the bottom there you see. Now, because of the Primordial Benediction, we also deal elemental damage. So we're actually using our tree here to scale off of that. So right now, we're getting elemental damage here based on our max life. Increased elemental damage, which is more damage, by the way. More flat and more increased. Then here, more flat and more increased. And then here, more flat and more increased. And then here we have another 25% missing life, even more flat. So that allows us to scale off of elemental damage while also scaling off of, skill damage, okay? Which is insane. It allows us to pretty much double dip on our primordial staff and allows us to scale it even higher. And it would allow us to actually scale it into the end game. Now, there's something interesting where we can run some other auras and stuff like that to do even more elemental damage, but we'll get into that later when it gets there. Now, let's talk about, I think, our attributes, I guess. Like, I'm kind of like new at Slormancer, I'll be honest. So like not new, but like new at like explaining Slormancer builds, right? But essentially, the most important one is, of course, Savagery. Rank 45, where we get a bunch of flat damage from our tree. This essentially allows us to actually scale our flat damage, right? We get some armor penetration here. We get some crit chance here, right? Here we get some percent life and some mana regen. That is important, by the way. And then here we're eventually going to be getting some Reaper damage because that's the last amount of flat damage that we can actually scale. We do get an absurd amount of Reaper damage multi from the staff itself, so we do want to eventually scale the Reaper damage from the Primordial Staff of Spectral Horrifying Shapeshifter of Dread. So we definitely want to do that eventually. So yeah, we're now building into that. Although I'm not sure, I might actually go into evasion more. I might go into more evasion because I found that evasion is really strong for when I'm outside of the, the spectral form. So we might build more evasion. I'm not entirely sure. That's pretty much for the attributes. Let's talk about the gearing. So I'm gonna just like look over our gear right now. We do have the Infinite Wisdom ultimatum until we get to 100, and then I'll swap into a different ultimatum. I'm not entirely sure which one yet, but we'll figure out when we get there. Probably some kind of reduction ultimatum, like damage reduction. But here's our helmet. Right now, just life, mana regen, life, increase area size, effect. So the increase area size increases the area at which we do, and then the increased area of effect, the increased area effect, that gives us more damage with our staff. So essentially, the increased area size gives us more AoE, and increased area of effect gives us more damage. Okay, we obviously want some elemental pen on our stuff because we're doing elemental damage now, and we have some mana regen. The main reason we have some mana regen is, like I said, we're consuming our entire mana bar every single time we swap into spectral form. So we definitely want the mana regen, right? Kudos. Amulet here, we got to upgrade this, but it's like the same idea. Life, raw damage, right? And elemental damage. Same thing here. Life, mana regen, like just the whole 9 yards, the same exact idea, right? Literally life stacking, percent damage stacking, and then, some crit chance as well here and there. Like it's literally all the same down the road. I just need to upgrade my gear and get it at actual high levels. This pair of boots is very strong. The unique effect, you have a bunch of flat crit if you haven't been dealt damage recently. This is really strong because we're constantly in spectral form. So as long as if we're getting hit that often, so we end up with a lot of extra crit chance. Right now we're at 54% crit, which is amazing for us, right? Like this early on in the character, cool. Here's just a ring. I still need to reroll the epic stats, like nothing too crazy here, just crit chance, crit damage, and all that. Same thing here. Area effect, crit damage. I've been swapping into evasion on pieces though instead of armor and Ellie res, mainly to make it so that when we are out of Reaper form and all that, it means that we can actually dodge things here as well. Right now I'm running raw damage multiplier, but actually something better than this is Echoes of Villainous, which will trigger a echo and deal 30% of the damage that you just did, and that can trigger on the big pop from the Reaper form thing. So we're definitely eventually going to want that. Uh, uh, St. Pauldrons. The Pauldrons is going to be armor Ellie pen, the unique effect, because there's like a pair of Pauldrons with like armor Ellie pen, right? So you can actually get that, and that's actually good for us because we're armor and we're skill damage and we're elemental damage. So having both is great, right? And that's pretty much it for my gearing. I'm going to be upgrading this, and I'm going to be making another video, like a full build guide, once we're done with this character. So stay in tune if you want to see that. There's Reaper runes. Like my Reaper runes aren't really that refined right now. I need to do a bunch more forge, but essentially we're just doing Reaper damage. But like I'll be honest, I probably don't even need this. I just don't have access to the rest of the runes currently. It's probably going to be some kind of ultimatum based Reaper, probably, now that I'm looking at all of this, or the movement speed. Or it could be Alpha and Omega. Alpha and Omega is really interesting because it scales off of elemental and skill damage at the same time, like the rest of our shit. So this actually ends up being a decent amount of damage. So maybe we could run this instead. I'm not entirely sure, but it could end up being a lot of extra damage for free. And that's pretty much it for the character. That's pretty much it for the build. I will make another video in the future where we go more in depth once I'm finished with the character. With all that being said, this has been Dread, off to go do something else. Bye.